Hi everyone, welcome to Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. I'm your host Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at Outgrow, and I have with me here my co-host Anoushka Chopra, who is the marketing specialist at Outgrow. And for this month, we're going to interview Amy Vernon, who's an award-winning journalist and the head of communications at Probity Ledgers. Hello, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, we're doing well. Anoushka, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Amy, thank you so much for agreeing to be our marketer of the month.
Absolutely.
So we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. Try to keep your answers to one word or one sentence only. And Anoushka is going to start with the first question.
Okay, so Amy, our first question for you is, what is your middle name?
Jill.
Jill. Amy Jill Vernon.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me go on to the second question, which is, are tomatoes a fruit or a vegetable?
Fruit.
That's correct. Okay. The next question is, who's your favorite Harry Potter character?
I am not a huge Harry Potter fan. I don't dislike Harry Potter, but I don't really follow Harry Potter. It's probably Hermione, but I mean, I've only
Okay.
read one of the
Okay,
books.
that's good enough. We'll
Yeah,
stick
that's
with
fine.
Hermione.
Yeah.
Neil Patel or Gary Vaynerchuk? You have to pick one.
What if I say neither?
That'll be
We
a
still
first.
have to
That's
pick
fine.
one. But we'll take neither as an answer, but you still have to pick one if you had to.
Well, I've met Gary, and he's a very nice person, so I will say Gary.
Oh, okay.
Okay, cool.
Point next.
Giving presents or getting presents?
Oh. Giving.
Really? Am I the only one who enjoys getting presents?
That was a tough one to do, but I think it depends. If it's my birthday, I'd much rather be getting them.
That's true.
Well, I personally hate surprises, so I don't like getting presents. I like giving them. I also hate clutter in my house, so. Okay, so the next one is, how many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
2 to 4.
Okay.
That's healthy-ish.
Ish.
Yeah.
I
Next.
literally thought you
Oh,
were
please.
saying. I literally thought you were saying too tough for me instead of 2 to
Oh.
4. So
Oh.
I'm just like, oh my god, is that a tough question too? But okay, fair. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, next.
The next question is, what's something you could eat for a week straight?
Pizza.
Nice.
Okay, fair. Fill in the blank. I can survive on dash hours of sleep.
5 to 6.
Okay.
Again, that's healthy-ish.
Ish. I'd rather
Yeah.
not, but I can. Less than that, and I'm
Okay.
useless.
Yeah,
Okay. The next question is very easy. What does a person need to be happy? Such a simple question.
That's like the meaning of life. I feel like I should just say 42 because that's the meaning of life.
Nice.
Well, you know what? If I had the answer to that, I'd be rich and living on an island in Tahiti. So I'm not even going to pretend to have the answer to that.
Okay.
That's the most honest answer we've received so far, I think.
Well, technically, what you also mean is that one needs money to be happy, which is okay.
I mean, she's not wrong. That's not really wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly can help, but just, like I said, if I had the answer to happiness, I'd be
somewhere else.
Actually, do you know what? For me, it's sometimes it's just being alone. So maybe that's why I'd move to the island of Tahiti.
Oh, true. That's the same for me as well. Sometimes just a night with myself.
Yes.
Wow, this rapid fire got like really deep, really fast. Moving on.
I'm not
Oh,
even
wait. Yeah.
dying. Yeah, please move on to the next question.
How many tabs do you have open on your browser on an average?
Well, I usually have 3 browser windows open with different personas, and so I'd say 40 to 60.
Wow.
Oh my
That's the
goodness.
max we've ever had on this podcast.
I've had
I
more at
suddenly
some
feel
times, but
I suddenly feel insufficient with just 7 tabs open right now. I just feel like I'm not doing enough work. Not
no,
have
no, no,
40.
no. It's trust me, it's this is not a way to be.
There's actually, and this is
Okay.
obviously not a promotion for the app, but there's a Google Chrome extension called Tab Extension Killer. So what it does is, if you have 40 to 60 tabs open and you haven't accessed the last tab in an hour, it will close it automatically, and it keeps doing that. So
Well,
just say,
I use tree style tabs, a Chrome
oh,
app,
brilliant. Oh,
and
okay.
I can sleep things, and I see how I
Yeah.
got to them, and yeah, I have
What's it
a
called
lot of
again, yours?
tree style tab. Oh no,
Okay.
no, that was Firefox. This is called Sidewise.
Ah, okay.
Sidewise.
I'll
Okay.
check that out as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So last question, Anushka.
Yep. It is a marketing prediction for 2020. Fill in the blank.
Well, I don't know if this is a prediction as much as a hope, but the collapse of influencer marketing.
Oh.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a prediction. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that's going to happen, but.
Well, the question is what you make it, so that's good enough.
And by the way, I just counted, and on the window that I'm on the browser instance that I have open, I have 18 tabs.
Oh, okay. And what about the other
Okay.
browsers?
There's a couple more.
Couple.
Okay,
Just a
fair.
couple. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the end of the not so rapid fire round, but we had an amazing time on the rapid fire anyway. It's like we asked you a question, and you actually were the first person who was just like, oh, "That's a deep question. What do you say?" So
Yeah,
that was amazing. That was unique. That was really unique. Okay. Let's go on to the bigger questions now. The first one is, what got you interested in marketing in the first place?
It's kind of interesting because I call myself the accidental marketer, because I never really sought to go into marketing. It just sort of happened. I was a journalist for many years, and in the third round of layoffs one year, I saved my entire team's job except for my own, and decided I wasn't going to try to stay in journalism at that time because the industry was such a mess. And at the same time, I was already a power user on Dig and Stumble Upon, and an active user on Reddit, and was just sort of getting. It was the early days of social media, and it was just sort of getting into that. And I got hired by AOL on a contract to do some work for their money and finance verticals, and started doing social media marketing, basically, and training, and best practices, and some management, and it just sort of evolved from there.
Okay.
Okay, that's
I was actually.
interesting. Yeah.
It is. I was going through your webpage, and you refer to yourself as a digital Swiss Army knife. So, can you tell
Yes.
your listeners why you call yourself that?
Yeah, just because I operate in a lot of different areas in digital. And sort of my work history has sort of shown that. I've managed and run community. I've been in charge of social media marketing. I've, managed social media. I've managed social media marketers. I've done digital marketing. I've done content marketing and just content creation. I've worked with product audience engagement. So I just sort of have a lot of different tools that I can pull out depending on what role I'm in. And the Swiss Army knife seemed to come closest to describing me.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
I think that's really amazing.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the next question.
Right. So, this one is about building a community. I think, especially in today's world, it's just so important to connect with your customers and to be interactive. So, how does a brand go about building a community? Like, if you had to give out the top three ways to build community for a brand, what would they be?
Well, I mean, first, the primary thing is giving them a place to be. Create, whether it's a Twitter chat or you have uh, a channel on, a Discord or Slack or Telegram or any of the zillion different chat platforms there are, WeChat, WhatsApp, because what you want to do is you want to give a specific channel where you can actually be talking to your your customers who hopefully become your community. Obviously, not all of them are going to be, but for those who are very involved in what you're doing, um, you need to give them sort of a place where they can be, where they can talk together and they can talk to you directly. So that's first. Second is you need to recognize the voices of, I don't necessarily want to say the most passionate voices, but the most um,
Active one?
um, well, it's not the most active, it's not the most passionate, and it's not the most helpful, but it's sort of a combination of those three. And
Okay.
and it's kind of hard to
Mhm.
say. It's one of those where you know them when you see them.
Mhm.
And they're members of the community who are active, but they're not just active, because you can have negative members of your community who are very active as well. Um, but they're,
Vibrant, you
yeah,
know.
but they're people who are very interested in what you're doing. They're not afraid to give negative feedback, but when they're giving it to you, they're giving it to you in hopes that you're listening and will improve things, they're not just complaining. So it's really learning to recognize those voices and and cultivating them and supporting them publicly. So, if they do give you negative feedback one time publicly, and someone jumps on them for being negative, and you say, no, no, that's a really good question, or that's a really good point. And you show that it's okay to take some negative feedback as long as it's given in this constructive manner. And third, it's it's finding some way to reward them, and that can be as simple as publicly thanking them, or it can sometimes be, it can be swag or a gift card or something, but it doesn't have to be a gift. Actually, it can often be something as simple as saying thank you. We had one community member who was always creating um, uh, social media images for us, and we would publicly thank him and use some of them because and that's what he was doing. If he was doing it because he really loved the company and loved what we were doing, and it meant something to him that we liked them, that we were sharing them, and we'd also link to his Twitter. So if someone else really liked them and wanted to hire him to do some graphic design or something, great. That wasn't necessarily the point of sharing it that way, but it's supporting them in a similar way to how they're supporting you.
Mm. That's pretty interesting way to do it. But
Yes.
if once you've built a community, how do you ensure that your customers stay loyal and happy?
It honestly, it's a lot of work. There's no simple way, but it's a lot easier to do if you've built it the right way to start with, instead of just sort of having a bunch of people and having people who are complaining and sort of take over your community, and then trying to fix that is much, much, much more difficult than building it correctly first time around. So it can take more time to build it, but it's a lot healthier. And so really to keep it healthy is to continue listening to them, and making sure that people who are abusive don't sort of take over the microphone, particularly if they are abusive to other members of your community. That's actually, I was always much more lenient to people who were angry at us than if they were angry at an abusive of fellow members. Like that was, if you do that again, you're gone. Whereas if they're being angry at us, that's really a matter of trying to dig down and really understand. And sometimes you can turn that around into someone who is very supportive because they see that you listen to them. But it's very, very important to protect your community members against people who might come in to try to disrupt it. And it may sound, oh, well, that's in your best interest. And yes, it is in your best interest, but you wouldn't, it's in nobody's best interest to have a community where you have trolls who are coming in and being abusive.
So when you say that, go ahead, Anoushka.
No, please go ahead. That's fine.
I was going to say, so when you say that, obviously you're penalizing members who are being troublesome, and also you want to find a way to reward members who are being really nice, or are really good at coming up with points. So you do you think of reward systems like Reddit has already, and you give them points which might not have any monetary value, but which give them more weight on the platform? Or even Facebook pages now have top fans, kind of comments where, if you're a top fan and you comment, it kind of shows your comment first. So stuff like that. And how does this also relate to the fact that you actually don't like influencer marketing? Because once you actually start giving people points, they kind of become mini or micro influencers.
No, and you know what? And that's a really good point. I think what's sort of what I mean by that is in terms of the influencer marketing is I feel like a lot of it, and we've seen a lot of it be very artificial. And it's because what influencer marketing now is really just looking at, oh, this person has, 100,000 followers, 500,000 followers, but you're not looking at actually the quality of the followers, not even the quality of the followers, the quality of the engagement. Because you could have someone, and I've been saying this for years, you can have someone who has 100 followers, but if they're the right 100 followers, that's actually the influencer.
Right.
So for the reason I'm sort of negative about influencer marketing isn't because there isn't such a thing as influencers, but it's because the metrics to decide who they are aren't really measuring the right things. I'd say like 99% of the time. So I don't see it necessarily at odds with what you're saying. And I think sometimes, I do like those badges on Facebook. I'm in some Facebook groups and also on some brand pages where I get that. And I'm like, oh, I'm a top fan this week. And it just, it makes you smile, like, oh. And particularly a couple of the groups I'm in where it's like conversation starter. And I was like, oh, wow, I've really been active here. And that means something about what this group is to me. And it does tell something to other followers about who you are. Because if you're a conversation starter, for example, that means it doesn't just mean that you post things, but you post things that people are interacting with, that people are actually having conversations about. And so things like that, they actually tell something to other members and indicate something about how this person interacts.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I was asking earlier, you guys were talking about bad reviews and maybe negative members of the community, and I thought of crisis management. Like, maybe could you give an example of something you did for a client? Maybe someone got a very bad review, or maybe there was just a very negative member of the community who was maybe attacking you on social media. So, how do you act during such a crisis?
Um, actually, I had one day where I spent probably like 5 hours, and then had the CEO even come in and spend like an hour or two talking with our community on Telegram. It was we were a blockchain company. The company had had an ICO before I came on board, and then the market sort of went up, and then the market for all blockchain companies, even Bitcoin, everything crashed. And so, of course, when you have people who've spent their money, there's a certain degree of emotion that comes along with that. And I think that's true of when people are purchasing products as well. It's a different level of emotion than just sort of even a publication that you've been reading where you don't like what they're talking about, or just when there's a financial stake involved, particularly in ICOs. Some people spent put a lot of their money in, and they were making a bet. And so I understood the emotions behind it and didn't want to and in addition understood that it wasn't just about our token, that it was about all of the tokens they bought. Everything had crashed at that point. So they were upset really in general. And they were asking these questions of every community they were in. So I was a little more lenient at first. However, it got to the point where every question that was being asked had been asked and answered multiple times by me, by our CEO, got some questions answered by devs. We spent a lot of time with them because, again, like I said, we understood that A, there was an emotional investment, and B, it wasn't just us, that this was an industry-wide issue. But we got to the point where I said, look, we've answered your questions. We understand where you're coming from, but there is nothing else we can say. That we're not going to suddenly have a different answer for you. There's nothing that we can say. We need to, not have these questions for at least a few days and just talk about the technology and what we're doing. We're happy to answer any other questions about the technology and about the product and what we're working on. But just the questions about the token, there are no more answers. You've gotten all of the answers, and you're just not asking any questions that are different than you've already asked. And at one point I had to put my foot down and just say, look, I think it was like Thursday or Friday, and say, the next person who asks one of these questions that we've answered already is going to be temporarily banned until Monday. So you're not getting a ban. You're getting a time out. And now there was someone who wasn't around when I said that, and he came in and asked a question, and I linked to where I said that above. I said, I'm not going to, kick you out for the weekend because you weren't here. And I know that you don't always look back when you come in. That's fine. But in the end, I ended up not having to temporarily ban anyone because I think they were tired too. And they needed someone to just, put their foot down and say, okay, enough. Let's talk about something else. You could talk about anything else that you want, but let's just take a break from here. And sometimes you do have to put your foot down like that. But I think people respect that, particularly if you have been spending all of that time talking to them. That they get it. They're just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until you say stop.
I mean, I think it's just I agree with what you're saying. I think it's so important to understand your clients and maybe strike a conversation sometimes. And the best way to do that really is to use interactive content. I mean, uh, at Outgrow, we build a lot of surveys and maybe custom review forms because we think the best way to find out what your client is going through is to just ask them, ask
Mhm.
them about the experience they had and if there's anything that they'd like to change. And
Yep.
that I think that simple gesture can go a very long way.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just move on to the next question, which is okay. I think you've already answered this in a way. The question was
Right.
one thing that you think is bullshit, but others think is true, and that would be influencer marketing to an extent. So we'll skip this one and go to the next one, which is what do you think makes a brand authentic, and how can you build brand authenticity?
Um, it's it's a difficult question because the only way to build authenticity is to be authentic, and so I think that you need to make sure that the people speaking for you um, are are understanding and are understanding what your message really is, and believe in it, because it's you really can tell when people don't believe what they're saying, even when it's written digitally. Maybe not in a sentence or two, but after a little bit, you can tell when people aren't being genuine. Um, it doesn't mean that all your employees have to have drunk the Kool-Aid and believe everything that ever
Mhm.
comes out, but just that everyone is on board and understands what the mission is and what your message is, and and is expressing that in their interactions with the public. Um, and really, it's listening to people. It's sort of like what you were just saying about asking for feedback. It's not just asking for the feedback, but also um, recognizing that and implementing some of those suggestions when appropriate, or at least having the conversation with them saying, this is really great idea. It's not something on our immediate roadmap, but it's something that um, we've been talking about, and we will add to the roadmap. We don't know if it's even in the next year, um, but it is something that we're really interested in doing, in letting them in really having it be a two-way conversation, and not just, what's your feedback, what do you
Right.
think, and then thanking them for it, and then nothing ever happens from that. um, that's really uh, that's really how you can build that relationship and that authenticity. I tend to hate the word authenticity because it's so
It's
many
like a
people
buzzword.
say
Yeah.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
all buzzwords I
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
shy away from. But it really is a matter of, it's like the way to build authenticity is to be authentic, and to not just say one thing, but then
Mhm.
never revisit that, and never follow through on it.
I think the
Right.
point both of you are making is pretty valid in this case. It's to have a very two-way conversation with your customers. And I think in Outgrow, to anyone who's listening to this podcast, there's a ton of templates for brand research and market research that allow you, like Anushka said, to collect a ton of feedback and then to process that feedback in your Outgrow analytics. And based on that, I'm like, in however months you collected, you can make good decisions or plan your next year's moves. We have customer feedback analyzers and all of that. So I think all of this is pretty important for brand authenticity. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anushka?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a big believer in data too. I love data.
Hmm. Aha, here we have something new. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chief
All right.
influencer loves data. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I'm just gonna move on to the next question, which is about social media promotions. How do you think brands can find the correct platforms for themselves?
Um, Really, it's where are your customers or users or followers or audience? Like, where are they? And truthfully, those are the platforms for you. One
Mhm.
example
True.
is when I was at the Daily Dot, we had a reporter who covered K-pop among other things, and there's a huge, like, the online community for K-pop is enormous. Um, and but a lot of it is on YouTube, and that's a little harder, as a publication to sort of get into, even if you have videos, unless they're videos of K-pop artists, and you don't want to sort of be popping in comments, the comment section on YouTube, be like, "Hey, we wrote this article." So we were playing around, and I noticed a couple of times I had started some Flipboard magazines, and I noticed a couple of times we had some K-pop articles that blew up on Flipboard, just got 20,000 page views directly from Flipboard. So I built out a a K-pop Flipboard magazine for us, and we started getting more
Right.
traffic to those articles, because apparently, um, in terms of platforms where K-pop fans were getting their news, um, Flipboard was one of the big ones. Apparently, we didn't know,
Mhm.
but it was paying attention to the data and being like, "Huh, well, let's give it a shot." It's not heavy lifting to just put together a magazine, see what happens there, and so it was a matter of finding where they were, um, where that audience was for those articles, and and sort of cracking that nut. So you really have to just sort of pay attention and figure out where your audience or your customers or your users are, and going to them, because just because you have a platform or just because you use a platform doesn't mean that they're paying any attention to that platform.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you
so
so much, Sash.
the mhm.
Sakshi, would you like to take the last?
Yep. So the last one is, what are the three tips that you'd like to give to all our listeners to better connect with their audience?
um, Probably not too different from sort of the brand in terms of building a community, but I mean, the biggest thing I'd say is listen, because the people who are actually the people who are maybe sharing um, what might feel like negative feedback. Some of them are people who are just complainers. We all have seen them. We've all seen people who just enjoy complaining, and that's fine. That's certain users. But there are a lot of people who are sharing feedback and with the hopes that that it will improve.
Mm.
And so, really listening um, and second, I guess, would be really responding, having it be that two-way conversation. So they're not just speaking at you, but that you're finding some way to incorporate that feedback in some way, whether it's in new features or new products or um, new verticals that you're looking at. It just really finding some way to incorporate the feedback that makes sense. Um, and third would really be cultivating those community members who help you police the community, because
Mhm.
once you have uh, community members who are helping you tamp down the people who are really just complaining, or who are answering questions from perhaps new community members, those people are worth their weight in gold. They're just, it doesn't get better than that. That when you have your community members who are not only giving you feedback and supporting you, but are also helping make the community healthy.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, okay. So that was pretty helpful. I think Anushka's trying to join back, but that's fine. That was the last question, and thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Market of the Month. That was Amy Vernon, an award-winning journalist and the head of communications at Probity Ledgers. Do check out her website for more details, And we'll see you again next month with another Market of the Month.